Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I know that there are so many names joining from around the world tonight. And thank you so much for joining us for this special event dedicated to inner well-being and resilience. In a world that often feels overwhelming, finding moments of clarity and strength is more important than ever. Tonight, we are honored to bring together speakers from Druid, Humanist, and Baha'i traditions, each offering unique insights and practical wisdom on cultivating a resilient mind and a harmonious spirit. Through thought-provoking discussions tonight, we would like to interact with you and learn from you as well, and the pursuit of inner peace across different belief systems. That's what we would like to learn too. This is a space for reflection, connection, and dialogue where all perspectives are welcomed with openness and respect. We invite you to engage, learn, and discover new ways to nurture your inner well-being. Please note again that this event is being recorded for the new joiners. And once again, welcome. We are so glad you are here with us. Just to give you a heads up, tonight's panel discussion is going to be very laid back. We're going to start with my humble questions to each of my speakers. We're going to complete the first hour with them answering my questions. Please feel free to use the chat for your questions, share your questions there or comments. After the first hour, the last half hour of this session, we're gonna start the question and answer. Your questions or comments are gonna be shared, and we would like to have a discussion with you too. Okay, so let me get my questions up. Linda, I would like to start with you. Well, in Druidry, the natural world plays a central role. How does your connection to nature contribute to your inner well-being and resilience?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that question. Right. Yes. Druidry is really diverse. There's so many different ways to see the world, to view the world. It's a spiritual way of life. And I trained with OBOD, which is the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. And within that, they talk about three, and there probably are more, but three ways of working in the world, and also creating inner well-being, inner strength. Excuse me. One of these things, one of these yearnings that we have is to commune with the world of nature in a very deep way. Another of these is to be creative in our lives, whatever that might mean to us. And the other is to find a connection or a source of wisdom, be that God, goddess, or just nature itself. So for me, I within the order and within Druidry in general, I'm a bard. So I fit into the category of the poet, the songwriter, the artist, someone who likes to perform and share that during ritual. So I use this creativity to connect with nature, to connect with the source of creativity, with the source of all life, with the source of all beings. And this connection with nature in particular, which involves everything, everyone and everything, is all existence is part of the natural world. And to connect with this gives resilience and gives strength to your inner being. If you are disconnected, then you're not going to be as strong and healthy as you would like to be. And it's really difficult to stay connected in these times. But for Druids, this is one way to do it, is to connect with nature, to connect with ourselves, and to connect with the source of all wisdom. And the part that I usually read out during ritual, and I've done this with interfaith rituals and celebrations as well, especially for this time of year, which is Imbolc. The season of Imbolc is a season of first stirrings. This is about some little woodland creatures. All through the darkness, small beings gather up the tiny sparks of the sun, almost extinguished, but not quite. They take the embers and gently place them in their seed lanterns, and they start to walk. One by one, they come out and gather together, the light bringers, the bearers of spring. So this is, the whole story is wonderful for adults and children. This is a really good introduction to how we might use our connection to nature to look forward to what is coming, to be stronger within ourselves, to find hope.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful, Linda. Well, I'd like to continue with my similar question with AJ now. As a humanist, you place value on reason and empathy. How do these principles support your mental resilience and help you stay grounded in adversity? AJ.
Thanks, Eda. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me if I speak at this level? Is that okay? Great. Yes, reason and empathy are core parts of the humanist worldview. I'm not sure if everyone on this call is familiar with what humanism is, so I might say a bit about that. Reason and empathy, as I say, are core values in humanism. Humanism is a global movement. It's a school of thought. It's a philosophy. It's a belief system, and it's a way of life. We have humanist rites of passage in life, funerals, weddings. We care in the community, which I'll talk about that later as well, I hope. It's a way of finding an ethical way to live on this earth and flourish, using human agency, using human authority rather than one that is divine or one that requires belief in other dimensions or spiritual realms or supernatural agency. So we're looking from the humanist perspective. So most humanists are, by dint of that, atheist or agnostic. So we're not saying that there may or may not be other realms or agencies or deities that other belief systems may claim. We like to live in partnership and tolerance with all other faiths and beliefs. But we just say that because we don't have the tools to investigate those things, let's focus on what we can investigate, which is what science tells us, a naturalistic worldview. And I would say adversity, of course, can be defined in so many different ways. One way that I've found that reason and empathy helps me, especially in this world that we're living in, if we try and situate ourselves in where we are in 2025, the age of too much information, the age of post-truth, the age of sources of information being so called into question, demagogic leaders spreading their messages that and putting truth to the old adage that a lie goes halfway around the world before the truth has had a chance to put its trousers on. In that kind of a world, I think reason and empathy, having a razor of critical thinking to cut down the clutter that may come into our minds just and into our daily lives, whether that be from someone claiming to speak on behalf of a deity, someone claiming to speak on behalf of a people, of a tribe, speak on behalf of some other kind of revelation. I think all of these have to be taken with a critical mindset and critical thinking, and using that human faculty that we're curious and we do like to believe in things. We do like to use our intuition and our emotions, and we have logical aspects of our being, but we also have illogical aspects of our being. Not to say one is more than the other. Humanists certainly value the full range of human emotions. We're not just cold calculating machines, but I think reason coupled with empathy, so the two sides of that coin, has helped me stay grounded in times of adversity. And I think we live in particularly challenging times. And for me, I think a humanist perspective offers that. And I think especially in the youth, we see in the UK context, the latest surveys tell us that 70 to 75% of under 25s, under 30, that age group, they are not identifying with any organized religion or belief system. Now, that doesn't mean they're all humanist, but it means they could be potentially humanist. And we had to have some kind of a coherent movement to guide people there, because I think what religion can offer is very, very good. Like I say, when it's given with reason and empathy, and when it's given with the humility and a personal sense of meaning, rather than trying to maybe control or dictate to other people, which it can in some of its worst forms. So humanism offers a way to do that without the need to believe in a deity. And reason and empathy are two key tools that we have to try and address these things.
Thank you so much, AJ, for bringing also clarity in the understanding of humanism. I would like to ask again the similar question to you, Isis. The Baha'i Faith teaches the importance of spiritual and material harmony. How does this balance influence your approach to mental resilience and inner peace?
Thank you. Yeah. If it's okay, I'll just share my screen when I do it. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see.
Cool. Yeah, so in case anyone doesn't know what the Baha'i Faith is, it's a world-embracing religion. It's only about 200 years old. And I guess the main fundamental principles are the oneness of mankind, the equality of men and women, unity of all of the religions, and the belief that we all share one God that we love and worship. And so, yeah, as you said, the harmony of the spiritual and material world is really important in the Baha'i Faith, as it helps us to avoid kind of creating a dichotomy between choosing a spiritual or a material solution when it comes to things like mental resilience and inner peace. And as Baha'is, we're taught that we have an existence in this material earth at this time for a reason, and our souls are here to grow, and much of that growth will come from material tests. But then we're also guided to avoid extremes, for instance, extreme forms of self-renunciation or indulgence in materialism. But Baha'u'llah, who is the founder of the Baha'i Faith, he teaches that we should take full advantage of the benefits of the physical world, as long as we allow nothing whatsoever to intervene between ourselves and God, and that wealth can actually be one of the greatest hindrances of spiritual growth. And particularly for those of us blessed with material prosperity, we have to be really mindful of our tendency to become attached to the luxuries and physical comfort of this world. But the Baha'i writings also speak of the great importance of the elimination of the extremes of wealth and poverty, as they're detrimental to the spiritual and social development of humanity. So I've got this quote that says, we cannot segregate the human heart from the environment outside us and say that once one of these is reformed, everything will be improved. Man is organic with the world. His inner life molds the environment and is itself also deeply affected by it. The one acts upon the other, and every abiding change in the life of man is the result of these mutual reactions. So I guess that kind of encapsulates how we see a link between the physical and the spiritual world around us. But we did touch upon this idea of mental well-being in recent national youth conferences. So every year Baha'is have national youth conferences where all youth are welcome to come and discuss and read writings on our vision to transform the world and bring about peace. And last summer, we actually had a workshop based on what our true well-being is and what this means. And we were discussing how a lot of what's advertised in the world today about self-care or well-being practices are not only very individualistic, but they're also very materially focused. But when we were deepening on this issue, we came to a very different outlook on well-being and inner peace. And instead of looking at kind of this commercialized view of well-being, we instead looked at well-being emerging from service to humanity. So this was one of the quotes we studied, where it says, looking after one's health is done with two intentions. Man may take good care of his body for the purpose of satisfying his personal wishes, or he may look after his health with the good intention of serving humanity and of living long enough to perform his duty toward mankind. So I guess if we believe that mankind is one human family, with one earth that we all share, and that we're all interconnected, then any action to help another advance is also an act to help ourselves advance as well. And well-being is very multifaceted. It's a physical, mental, emotional, and also a spiritual thing, all of which can be nurtured through serving others. And service, I guess, also helps us to build mental resilience as we get to see ourselves and our potential and our highest natures through acts of service to others, and recognizing that we have something to offer to society. And through that, our mental resilience can also be strengthened. And so in the faith, we're encouraged in all of our community building efforts to empower others to also be of service. So we're all strengthened and our voices are all heard as we become more informed of like the needs of where we live and how to improve our communities. And I guess it's also widely recognized that a lot of mental illness stems from isolation and a sense of helplessness in the face of this crumbling world around us. And so this shift in perspective that well-being is actually born more of mutual aid and reciprocity, and to be able to act from this way of seeing can have quite a powerful impact, I think, on an individual's ability to cope with life's ups and downs. So one more quote I was going to share says, should prosperity befall thee, rejoice not, and should abasement come upon thee, grieve not, for both shall pass away and be no more. So I think inner peace can similarly be said to come from the way in which we look at life, particularly life's tests. And this quote in particular helps me definitely to understand the limit of our struggles and successes in this world, and helps me to look towards my purpose in a more clear way. Because we can choose to see the world as against us and our challenges as a constant battle that we seek to avoid, or we can see our challenges as a way of kind of increasing our capacity and resilience, and overall as being a gift from God for the development of our souls.
Thank you so much for answering my question, Isis. There are some comments in the chat, but I think we will reflect on them when we are done with the panel discussion. Back to you, Linda. Well, Druidic practices often emphasize mindfulness and reflection. Could you share a specific ritual or practice you use to maintain mental peace and stability during challenging times, please?
Okay, sure. Yes. One of the things that we do, whether it is alone or in a group of people, is to create a ritual in which we connect with the wider world and nature and with ourselves. I would tend to use the word awareness versus mindfulness. Mindfulness tends to, it belongs to a certain teaching or teachings at this time. I think some Druids might use that term, but I think I prefer to take that out of the picture and use awareness perhaps and connection, if that's okay. So yes, Druidic practices do emphasize awareness and reflection as well as connection. Joining together or alone, you can form a circle with your friends, your co-ritualists, your family, or when you're alone, you can create a circle around yourself that gives you sacred space. It gives you time to reflect, time to think, time to share, and so on. So that you can improve that connection. So ritual is very important, whether it's alone or in a group. One of the things that we can do while in a circle is to think of the season that we're following. And by season, it can be simply the spring, summer, winter, fall, or it can follow, in the case of Druidry, Celtic tradition. So we're coming up to Imbolc, which is the first stirrings, as I said. And at this time, we're coming from winter, looking towards spring, but we're not quite there yet. So while we're in the circle, we might have, for example, an invocation, which is inviting in others, inviting in the divine, if you like. Some people are animists, so it might be inviting in spirits, the spirit of place. It might be inviting in the ancestors to join us in a ritual. And I've taken one of Caitlin Matthews' invocations for a threshold to creating a sacred space. And I'll just read that to you. Here we go. It says, midwife of mystery, open the door. Infant of the infinite, come you in. Let there be welcome to the newborn truth. Let there be welcome to the spring of the year. In cold and darkness you are traveling. In warmth and brightness you will arrive. May the blessed time of Imbolc kindle the soul of all beings, bringing birth to innocence and integrity. From the depths to the heights, from the heights to the depths, in the heart of every soul. So that gives you an idea of how we might begin one of our rituals and go into a time of reflection, meditation, and connection.
Thank you so much for answering my question, Linda. Well, what you read was really beautiful as well. I'd like to continue with you, AJ. And well, humanism advocates for a life of meaning and purpose through human experience, as you explained a little bit earlier as well. How do you cultivate inner peace without reliance on spirituality? And how does this affect your well-being?
Thanks, Adele. Well, this is a fascinating question, and I must, again, I mentioned this before when we were planning, but I think these are very well chosen questions. And I think it allows us to lift the bonnet a bit more and understand what humanism is. And I would say these discussions I have even with fellow humanists and fellow atheists and agnostics, I would say that although spirituality may be an uncomfortable term, and actually I was just talking to some humanist colleagues about this the other day, it may be an uncomfortable term. For example, I work with apostates, people who've left religion due to bad experiences, family abuse, and so on, and also ideological abuse, and that kind of experience which suffocates our humanity, which by no means is the only experience of religion. There's plenty of beautiful and lovely and humane ways to live as a religious person, but some people don't experience that, and they come to humanism to seek refuge from that, to find a place where they can be with other like-minded people who don't believe in a God. So for those people, spirituality, you may not hear every humanist using it, but I do use it, and there's plenty of humanists that do use it. And I just wanted to share that with you. It's not necessarily incompatible with humanism to have an understanding of spirituality. Maybe we should ask, what do we mean by spirituality? Albert Einstein, Schrödinger, Carl Sagan, David Hume, and many other philosophers and intellectuals who are very much part of the humanist tradition and the scientific tradition and the philosophical tradition have spoken quite eloquently about this. And I think if we understand spirituality to be, on the one hand, a sense of humility, a sense of awe, and a sense of majesty before the reality of the cosmos, which is beyond our ability to grasp in any final sense. The beauty of a sunset across the sea, the turning of the celestial firmaments above us, the Milky Way at night, walking in a grand forest and feeling at peace, feeling at one with nature. Many other naturalistic philosophies, Buddhism to mention one, but many others have talked about this. So by no means is this only a humanistic definition of spirituality, but I think it's something that we all share as humans, and or even being carried away by music and dancing with others who are similarly entranced. All of these behaviors and experiences I've described, I would say are quite naturalistic. I would say are quite spiritual in that use of the word, and the humanistic experiences in that sense. So that's one way, sort of the awe, humility, and majesty, if we can understand spirituality. Another way to understand it, which I also find useful, is to look at the ways that we use spirit. For example, we use in English the spirit of the law as opposed to the letter of the law. Now, in that idiom, we're not implying there is some kind of God or there is some kind of supernatural force in between those words on the page in a law that's passed or a judgment from a magistrate. We just say, look beyond the outer, look inner. So look, beneath what's inside, underneath the skin, and take the actual fruit, take the meat of it. That's where the real meaning is. And to me, a spiritual experience is going beyond the outer, rather than just saying, "Oh, I'm in a forest. There's some trees. There's some leaves. There's some soil." That's the outer. But really walking in the forest, meditating, being mindful, all of the things that we talked about before already mentioned, those can all be humanistic experiences as well. So I think in there we find an interfaith connection, an ability to share the way of finding well-being, the way of finding a connection, even if it's a humanist and also a religious person walking in a forest in the same way, they can share that experience. So I personally have meditated for many years. And I would say a humanistic spirituality in this sense is core to my worldview and my life stance. So that's how I get my well-being. So I would correct the question a bit there. I would say that whether we call it spirituality or not, and I'm not wedded to that, you can call it nature, you can call it the cosmos, anything you want, and other humanists may have a word for it or different words for it or no word for it. The experience is there, and that's what matters. So because we're all human, we're all connected by a common DNA, again, coming out of evolutionary understandings which are core to humanism, coming from a scientific view of the world, it makes sense that we're all kind of gladdened and the well-being is soothed by such experiences, no matter what we call them.
Absolutely. I agree with your, connection as well. I think my connection is a little bit similar, but I'm leaving it for the discussion as well as we're gonna answer the questions a bit later. Isis, back to you. Well, Baha'i teachings, you also mentioned that emphasize unity and the development of virtues. How do you incorporate these values into your daily life, I wonder, to maintain inner well-being, especially during these difficult times that we live in currently?
Yeah, I'll just share again. Yeah, so yeah, as you said, the unity of humanity is one of the underlying principle of the Baha'i dispensation. And we believe that mankind has reached a stage in its collective maturity where peace on earth is not only possible, but an inevitable stage of evolution. And Baha'u'llah says the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. So I think also, though, when we speak about unity, it's important to understand that unity doesn't mean uniformity. And the Baha'i teachings really advocate for principles of unity and diversity, where a variety of the human race where variety in the human race is really valued, and human beings have been created equal and they require equal opportunities and treatment. And so I think when it comes to looking at the impact of unity on inner well-being, applying the vision of all people as one and deserving of equal opportunities is fundamental, because it shapes every thought we have and then every potential interaction we have with people. And this perspective will affect how we perceive our local and global reality, and then correspondingly affect our choices that we make. and it creates an openness of heart and mind and curiosity to learn about others and the world around us, and recognize that our own well-being is fundamentally linked to the well-being of all. And so when we look at our inner well-being as Baha'is, I think we're trying to use an outward-facing mind and consider how we create well-being for everyone instead of just for ourselves. And we cultivate and maintain this perspective through daily prayer and meditation. We take time to deepen ourselves through reading the writings of the faith daily. We meet together in study circles, and we learn how to put these principles into action. And this is really important, as we understand that religion is not established to create followers, but to actually transform the world. So action is a vital part of our faith. I think when it comes to facing something particularly challenging or difficult, Baha'is can take a lot of comfort in the knowledge that God never tests us beyond our capacity, and we can seek to understand how we're able to grow through these challenges. And being part of a community is also very important when it comes to being able to work through difficulties, knowing you can reach out for support. And it also challenges, if challenges emerge whilst engaging in working for universal peace, whether that's through teaching children's classes, helping children to understand their innate virtues, or working with young people where you live, and empowering them to serve the world around them, or generally just praying for the well-being of the world. We know that there's a protection in this that we can rely on, and we can trust in the process of crisis and victory, and knowing that one follows the other as naturally as kind of day follows night. And we just need to maintain our integrity and keep our focus and trust that things will work out.
Thank you so much for answering my question, Isis, and also giving examples. I think we do, I mean, I do have especially better understanding now. Linda, the Druid community, as you also mentioned, has a strong focus on connection and harmony, as well as other communities as well. How do you bring these principles of peace and resilience into your community, particularly in times of social or environmental problems?
Okay. Yes, I mean, this is a really good question. It's a question that we need, and I must say, before I say anything about myself, I'm really enjoying and getting a lot out of what the other two speakers are saying. So I can't wait for the rest of this. So anyway, Druids, I think what you see in the media, what you see in stories, is a bunch of, old white men with beards and white robes at Stonehenge doing who knows what, celebrating the rise of the sun. And okay, there are Druids that do that, and that's absolutely fine. That's part of who we are, but we're way more than that. I'm a bard, as I said, but there are also ovates, and there are Druids, and there are people who don't fit into any of these categories. So I focus on the arts. The arts are my thing, and that's where I try to make a connection with other people, people of other faiths and so forth. But there are people who work in medicine, who are natural healers, who are doctors, who are, who work as therapists. So you have a wide variety of caring people in that, who might be called an ovate. And then you have those who might be considered Druids, who identify as Druids, and they are the negotiators, the peacekeepers. They may go into law. They, they could very well become scientists. Any one of these groups could go into science, as well as fitting into their particular vocation. I'm studying with the Anglesey Druid Order at the moment, and Christopher Hughes is encouraging us to look at this, how we're crossing over. So yes, I focus on the arts, but can I use this in my work in interfaith to engage with others and create collaboration, to create peace and harmony? You know, how can I cross over into negotiation, with engaging with other people, communicating in positive ways, and so forth. So when I look at, you know, the principles of peace, that peace is extremely important in Druidry. Harmony, as you say, the connection is extremely important. One of the things that I try to do, as I said, is I try to share little pieces from our rituals that emphasize the fact that we focus on these. Not a lot of people know what Druidry is about. As I said, it can get quite deep, and it is all about connection. And I'll give you two little brief bits of ritual that might help. One is taking a breath. When we're in a circle, we take 3 breaths together, and this connects us with each other, but also with the environment that we're in, and helps us to respect each other and the environment, in my opinion. So we say, and feel free if you want to join in with this, together with the earth beneath us, together with the sky above us, together with the sea, the forest, the desert around us, with the blessings of earth, sea, and sky, we are here together today. So that's one example where it's not just about the words, there are motions, and sometimes we're holding hands. There are ways to keep that going and to focus on a particular issue as well. I mean, something like that will help you to focus on what we're doing to the earth, for example. And then we also have the Druid prayer for peace. I was going to save this for last, but I'm going to do it now. So we're thinking of moving from in here outward and back in again, whether we're alone or with a group. Deep within the still center of my being, may I find peace. Silently, within the quiet of the grove, may I share peace. And gently, within the greater circle of humankind, may I radiate peace. And then there's often chanting of awans, which we do 3 times. And again, awan, and that's on the slides that I have, is inspiration. It's the breath of inspiration that flows through all life. So bringing us together. And when I look at what's happening to the world, I can see that inspiration, that breath of life is being stifled in so many ways. For us to gather together and to speak that breath of awan, that inspiration around us and with each other, it's a very powerful thing. So we can be a scientist, a lawyer, a teacher, we can be a healer, a doctor, an artist, you know, a singer, a songwriter, a poet. We can do all of those things, but we all have that breath that we can share and use that to change, make positive changes. So I would bring that into one of the rituals, and I bring that into interfaith as well.
Thank you so much, Linda. I have a tiny question here. Do you use also, I don't know, instrumental tools or like sounds or music? Just I think it goes here. If you could clarify that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I included in my slides was we have a lot of bards. I'm one, but I don't play a musical instrument other than a drum. But we do have people who we have Dav the Bard, who is a very famous bard in pagan Druid circles, and he's amazing. He writes these incredible songs about nature. So there's someone who goes around and performs and draws in people and shares these thoughts that I'm sharing now. But we all, as I said, we also have this voice, this tool within us. Everyone has that to some extent. Even if you don't have the ability to speak, you can sign. you can dance, you can walk. So you can use your body as a tool in many cases where you cannot play an instrument. So I don't know if my voice will hold out, but I will try this. And I know you've heard me do this before, right? Other people have too, and hopefully I don't scream. So that was an example of an awin, and we would chant that around in a circle 3 times, and it's amazing the quality of that sound can become so moving, and you can feel it in your feet, you can feel it in your head, you can feel it in your heart when we're all doing it together. But even doing it by myself, I love it. And I actually think that sound, music, whatever form it takes, can make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing this with us. I believe so. Sound or music is really, really therapeutic and meditative as well. Thank you for answering my question. AJ, in your view, what role does community play in fostering resilience, and how do you help build a supportive, compassionate community for others to flourish?
I think the key word there is flourish. Human flourishing is a central aim, a goal of the humanist movement and of individuals and the movement as a whole. And human flourishing has so many inputs into it, but we've discussed some of those already. Mental well-being, but also just the basic human necessities that communities need to be resilient. Make sure they have enough resources, make sure they have freedom of expression, for example. So humanists are very active in freedom of thought, freedom of expression, politics, in campaigns, using the democratic engagement that we have lucky to have in countries like this, to make sure that people can self-actualize, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that they have that full pyramid of their needs satisfied is just a very basic thing. And so humanists are naturally attracted to that, as am I, in a general sense, but also Humanist UK, the organization that I belong to. Humanist UK is the leading provider of humanist community services in the UK. So, for example, pastoral care and chaplaincy, some terms that are borrowed from our Christian heritage in this country, but we still use them. Going back to what I was saying before about it doesn't matter what you call it, but it matters what the actual experience is and what you actually do. So, prison mentoring, offering guidance and support for people who are suffering in hospitals and family members as well as patients. So that kind of pastoral care, Humanist UK trains nationwide volunteers to do this part-time or full-time, as well as I mentioned before, humanist funerals, humanist weddings, humanist baby namings, confirmations and other things. As it's a global movement, it's not just the UK, it's not just Europe. In other parts of Europe as well. In Norway, for example, the humanist confirmations are a big thing. Tens of thousands of youth get confirmed following their kind of Scandinavian traditions every year. And there's many other humanist, rationalist approaches all over the world that follow the humanist path. And that all is leading towards trying to make sure that human values and what makes a human flourish and what makes a human society and a culture flourish and be resilient to some of the adverse effects and challenges that we mentioned earlier. That's certainly what every humanist is striving for. And as well as, and we can see, I think even in this meeting, there's so much crossover between the values that we share. We're happy to walk hand in hand with our friends who come from other faith and belief traditions to try and achieve this.
That's wonderful. Thank you also for covering the interfaith I don't want to call it achievements, but interfaith, connectivity that you have and you maintain. That's wonderful. And my last question, but not least, because we're gonna continue with the question and answer with our participants. ISIS, the Baha'i community is known for its efforts in building unity. How do you work within your local or global community to share the principles of peace and resilience, especially in the face of social challenges?
Thanks. Yes. So as I touched on before, let me just share that. Baha'is engage with their local communities in a few different ways in our efforts to build unity. And there's a few groups that I'll speak of today, and these are global, happening all around the world, and they're transforming communities as we speak, which is really exciting. So Baha'is all around the world are running children's classes. So these involve classes following a program of spiritual education. So this looks at a child's moral and spiritual education and encourages the whole community to take part of this side of a child's development. And part of this includes teaching them also of the oneness of religion and how all religions, although sometimes differing in their social laws and implications, all share the same fundamental truths and beliefs. And then alongside this, they're also understanding their innate virtues and spiritual attributes and learning about what that looks like in their everyday life and interactions. So in a way, children are learning that all of these virtues that we speak about are innate and already within them, and they're a bit like gems that they need to uncover. And it teaches them that any resilience or sense of peace is already within them, and they're just trying to, reveal the veils to that. And then we also have junior youth groups. So these are for 11 to 15-year-olds, and the program's called the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program. And this is all about providing young people with an understanding of their own potential. So in the groups, they are helped to develop language and powers of expression, develop capacity to make positive decisions, develop comprehension and critical thinking skills. And then also really practically, they're encouraged to plan and execute service projects for their local communities. And in these sessions, they also engage in obviously complementary activities like arts, drama, and sports. But throughout the groups, they all study, and this is universal text. They study these books, a series of books, and each book has a different story. And the content of these stories is intended to help the junior youth make positive decisions. And they explore concepts like kindness, justice, honesty, and it's the hope that understanding their own potentials and ways of serving others, they're also hopefully made more aware of their resilience and ways of developing this. And then when it comes to social challenges, the junior youth program helps the youth look around them at what their reality is and consider the social challenges in their specific locality and try and find solutions together and work towards bringing together their neighbours and people around them to create unity and peace in their own locality. And then following on from the junior youth program, young people then get engaged in a process of lifelong learning. So we have constant study circles that evolve a person's capacity to translate the Baha'i principles into action. And these go from learning how to teach a children's class to facilitating or animating a junior youth group, to holding devotionals, like prayer meetings in your own home, and then moving on to more complex community building processes, like looking at the dynamics of family life or the balance of the material and the spiritual. And then these study materials that we use are constantly being evolved and written and rewritten, and they're created in response to the needs and issues that we perceive happening in society. So they really actually address the social challenges of our time and help us all together kind of find tools within us and between us to face these huge social challenges and ills.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Isis. And thank you for sharing, examples of practices that, you use to stay close to each other. Just if you can, briefly cover this question, how do you relate to a world, less informed by the Baha'i faith, like, a little bit the interfaith side of the things, like, do you have classes open to other faiths to join as well, or do you have like discussions? I wonder.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, everything that we have, so a lot of Baha'is are involved in interfaith committees and things like that, but all of these activities, children's classes, junior youth spiritual empowerment program, all of the Ruhi books that we study as adults, well, from young people up to adults, everything is open to all from all different backgrounds. So in my junior youth group, I have Christian kids, I've got some Muslim kids, kids with no faith background. Actually, I don't have any Baha'is in my junior youth group or my children's class. No Baha'is in either. And then in my study circle, I have a Muslim and someone who's not religious, a Christian, and then 2 Baha'is. So yeah, it's very diverse. We try to start small. We're very grassroots focused. So everything that I personally engage with in my community is on my street and my block, and then the streets attached. So it's all very small scale. And the hope is that when Baha'is are everywhere and focusing on their small communities, that will then grow instead of trying to, address the masses, because that doesn't necessarily work if you can't touch hearts of people.
Absolutely right. Yeah, thank you so much for answering my question. Well, we came to the end of my questions. I think it is time now to open and receive your questions. I know that, thank you, AJ, for answering. There have been some questions in the chat, and I'm just gonna check the questions in the chat and bring them in, but please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and direct your questions to our speakers.
I would like to ask the question about, the Baha'is, that, they are a good faith also and all that. But the thing is, when just a kind of a general principle that, converting people from one religion to the other and all that seems to be one of the sources of problems. Like, for example, Islam and Christianity, there are groups that are very aggressively converting people from one religion to another on all kinds of excuses. They try to make it very rational and all that. And um, so why do the Baha'is, if they respect all religions, do they have a goal of converting and calling people? Now they have to call themselves as Baha'is instead of whatever their other religion was.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Actually, I think one thing, well, the main thing we're encouraged not to do is convert people. We have a very, I don't know, like world-embracing view of our faith, and in no way are we trying to convert anyone to become Baha'i, because we believe that your relationship with God is very personal and it's between you and God. And that even comes down to the laws of the manifestation. So no one can tell you need to follow this law if you call yourself Baha'i or anything like that. That's between you and God. But all of the activities that we have in our communities, that's all open to everybody. And some people will be touched by the words of Baha'u'llah and will, because of love of what he says, decide they want to be Baha'i or they want to be part of the faith. But everyone is encouraged to be part of everything that we do. Not everyone that teaches a children's class will be Baha'i, or junior youth will be Baha'i. We have people who are not Baha'i running study circles. So there's, no,
I
we're not
used to
trying to.
attend, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
used to attend, breakfast meetings that are organized by Baha'i individuals or families. And one time I was at one of those meetings, and the host sat down next to me and said, Manek, because I'm from the Zoroastrian religion, which is a very ancient monotheistic religion. And he says, Manek, uh, the Zoroaster, was talking that there will be other Socians, which is kind of holy people or spiritual people coming from time to time. And that Baha'u'llah is one of those, so now we should all become Baha'is. Uh, so instead, like the interfaith is the better model, where we all gather together and we work together on common projects, instead of trying to get them to become, our religion instead of their religion, all that. So that's just the problem I'm seeing, and this is what causes, you look at the wars between, the Muslims and Christians and in Palestine, Israel, or Jewish people and all that. So that's just my little question about that. They should not try to do these kind of things. Instead, they can share their information just like we do in interfaith, that, okay, this is what Baha'is believe. And then it's up to the people, if they want to, then they can come to you and say, oh, I would like to become a Baha'i, But they seem to try to actually, instead of maybe a hard sell, they do a soft sell, Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's an interesting experience you've had. Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody's perfect and everyone will go about things different ways. We are very much encouraged to not, or told directly we should not convert or tell people to be Baha'i, but yeah, I'm not sure what happened in your experience, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing though.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Manek. Well, I think that might have happened to each of us from maybe different beliefs. I think is a bit, like how much you love your faith and you are trying to kind of talk about it. And while talking about it, because you are so passionate, maybe sometimes you get misunderstood, but obviously that's your experience, but it has happened to me in past as well. Anyone else from my panelists would like to, I don't know, share anything around this question? If not, there is a question in the chat. Yes, AJ, please.
Well, thanks, Hedda. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what the last speaker just said about the interfaith approach to these things being a much more, especially when we're talking about community resilience and community cohesion, and just the challenges that's facing us in the century ahead. We can see that there are plenty of forces ready to divide us for their own cynical reasons, or maybe even just unintentionally divide us. And I think being a Muslim by yourself, in your own corner of the world, and being cut off, or being a Hindu or being a Buddhist in the same way, or being a humanist, is not really, I think, the best way to go, kind of empirically, looking at what's worked in the past, looking at what makes, we're social beings, we're stronger together. And even if that togetherness is reaching across the aisle, we're still stronger. We're even more stronger, actually, when two communities who have every reason to fall out with each other, maybe because they have a different name for a god, or maybe because they pray in different directions, or because they fast at different times of the year, or they eat different types of food, that is superficially reasons to fall out. But if we find a way, and there's plenty of ways, we've covered many of them here, to connect despite that, based on our shared humanity, then that makes us so much the more stronger. And actually, I've found that, I mentioned it in response to Isis talking about the recourses. I've been lucky to attend these. I've been a friend of the Baha'i community in London and online for many years. That's made me, actually in many cases I've been told, which I consider a great honor, that they thought I was Baha'i in that meeting until they asked me. No one actually asks you, you just sort of express your beliefs and exchange ideas, and it's fine. And that's actually made me a better humanist, quote unquote. And similarly with my other interfaith work, engaging with Muslims, with Sufis, with Buddhists, with Jews, and with Christians as well. That makes me understand and appreciate both the positives and some of the drawbacks of my own belief system. Of course, nothing's perfect. So far from making us more divided or making us confused with too many inputs, actually, I find that that brings a lot of clarity, because we see, as the Baha'i, teachings say, the oneness of all religions, and what really, even though they may wear different clothes and different garbs, and not to override the differences, there are important differences, but unity in diversity, as the Baha'i says. We don't want to cancel out the diversity or pretend it's not there, or to be blind to it, but to say the diversity helps us unite. It doesn't actually hurt us. So I'm very happy to hear that comment from the audience.
Thank you, AJ. Yes, Linda.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally pushed my unmute button while AJ was talking there. I didn't mean to. This is a really interesting topic, and I'm going to show my age here. When I first started working in interfaith, it was completely misunderstood, and people would show up at interfaith events with the purpose of proselytizing and converting. Now, this was a while ago, and it may still happen in places. So it has issues too. However, that has really changed. It really has, it's changed over the years. Also, my first experience with Baha'i folks wasn't in this country. It was when I lived in the US, and I had a negative experience as well. But that was just one time, one person. And so, you know, it can happen anywhere. It can happen anytime. I do treasure the interfaith relationships that I have been able to form over the years since I've moved to Scotland in particular, but before that as well. It's incredibly meaningful to be able to collaborate, to work together. Isis mentioned grassroots work, working with interfaith organizations like Interfaith Glasgow as a Druid, and supporting a picnic in a park for refugee families. That kind of thing. Working with other faith groups on creating something for Interfaith Week. There are different groves, the Interfaith Harmony Interfaith Grove. I always get that mixed up. Druids plant trees. Druids are totally into trees. Give us a tree, we're into the tree. So we, the Druid network plants trees either in person or donates money to plant groves of trees. There's also an interfaith one or two or three probably. And I love that we can contribute together to keep these trees growing and grow new ones. And I think that is a valuable way of working together, in addition to all these small projects in our local communities. So when you look at some of the things, the few things that have happened that are not so positive, there's so much more that is positive about connecting with people of other faiths. I've been doing it for a very long time, and I couldn't live my life any other way. I just have to say that. I'm truly enjoying what AJ and Isis are having to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I see Derek has his hand up. Derek, please.
Yeah, I just put after my name Quaker because Quakers have been involved with peace work and reconciliation, various other things, probably from the very beginnings in the 17th century. But although George Fox was a bit of a, anyway, we won't go there. He tried, I don't think he tried to convert people, but he certainly, he was a disruptor, put it that way. But then, I think in terms of come together in interfaith, Linda mentioned an event where she helped very much with her all interfaith connections to, if you like, share the Quaker faith. So it's finding the interconnections with community and with building a better world, and you can find it in various other faiths. I think my belief is in many ways that it chimes perhaps with Baha'is that there's only one true. There's not one true religion. There's many religions and many paths, and we if we're lucky, we find a path that we can tread for a while where it really engages us and engages our whole being and our way of life. So that's just what I'd like to say. It wasn't really a catch question, but anyway, it's just an observation. There you go.
Thank you, Derek. Would any of my panelists like to, I don't know, reflect to what Derek just said? I know that you shared a lot about your faith, or anyone else from the participants, if you'd like to, share from your belief, given the violence and all that is unfolding, how do you keep peaceful dialogue or an action? How do you keep peaceful mindset? How do you take care of your inner well-being? Or in your communities? It would be interesting finding out from you as well.
Could I offer some thoughts on this?
Sure.
Thanks, Eda. Yeah, it's again, living in a very privileged country and a very privileged lifestyle. It's difficult to really be able to appreciate, and this past year, for many reasons, has been a very difficult one for many of us who are involved in community activism, social justice, solidarity, global solidarity with people who are suffering. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have many of these difficult years ahead. So there's no and I think going back to one of the questions that I started with, answering reason and empathy, although humanism advocates a particular way of life with particular reliance on reason, on empathy and certain tools, by no means should we lose that sense of empathy with people do choose to put their faith in things that don't qualify as a humanist belief or live up to humanist standards of critical thinking and evidence. I think that's where the empathy comes in. That's where the tolerance and the respect and the understanding of what the human condition is. As humanists, we believe that religion came about because of our natural evolutionary need to be curious, to find answers to things. And as our understanding has grown about the world in some ways, certainly there's still a lot more that we don't know, then our relationship with religion, with supernatural beliefs, that's changed. And I think that's being reflected now in, as I mentioned before, some of the statistics that we're seeing, not just one, but a many decades-long trend of youth turning away from organized religion. And I don't say that as a win for humanism necessarily, and because I don't like to see it in those terms, because the important thing is that youth are not, and who would blame them, turning away from organized religion, from movements, because they're becoming disenfranchised or just disillusioned with politics or with faith and beliefs, and who would blame them? If they then drop off the map completely and just become completely passive, completely atomized, lose that sense of community, lose that sense of resilience, which we need as social beings, then in some sense they become easy prey and targets for people who would want to, or the forces that would want to further divide us and further lead to sort of social collapse and a very difficult future ahead. So I think the resilience that we're building through interfaith efforts is so key. And if we can't, I think at the expense of, if we're trying to appeal to someone and our particular philosophy or worldview that we're offering isn't resonating with them, I think we should have enough interfaith connections to offer them other parts that may appeal to them. The important thing is to reach them. That's, as a community activist, that's what I'm looking for. How do I reach people? How do I activate people? How do I get them? I mean, there's another Baha'i phrase, quicken the hearts, which I always come back to. How do you quicken the hearts? How do you get people to, as they can, everyone has different priorities and jobs and family and so on, but within their own sphere of influence, how do you get them to serve and to be activated and to contribute in some small way? And whether that's through humanism or a faith or a belief, I think that work is invaluable, and we can't let go of that. So I'm very happy to be part of efforts like this to keep that going. And I think RFP, EDA, and others have done sterling work in that, and we try and follow in their footsteps.
Thank you so much for your kind comment, AJ, as well. I see that there are 2 hands. I'm just gonna go it in a row that is showing on my screen. I see Manek is first, and then I'll follow with you, Cheryl. Manek, please.
Thank you. I was just thinking that, the founders of all, at least many of the major religions, whether it was Zarathustra, or who is also known as Zoroaster by the ancient Greek philosophers, or, Muhammad or others, they were telling people to, listen to them and their teachings about what are the values that we should have, and how we should practice living, and they didn't say, now you must call yourself Zoroastrian or a Muslim or anything like that. But, and so like, for example, Zoroaster in our teaching, in his own compositions, in poetic compositions called the Gathas, in the very ancient Avesta language, which is very close relative of the Vedic Sanskrit language. He was saying that, and he was focusing on how we live in this life rather than what will happen in heaven or hell or anything like that. He was saying, okay, this you have to be truthful, kind, charitable, help people in need, and just a very practical thing. And he said to acquire wisdom, from people, who are wise people, and that's why he used the name of Ahura Mazda, which means uh, wise creator or something like that, or Lord of Wisdom, uh, and to then decide for yourself individually, not to follow in blind faith, to anything that you listen or read, but to think about those things, to say, okay, what makes sense whenever I have to take a decision, what is right and what is wrong based on whatever knowledge, that I gain. And that could be knowledge from the scientists, the latest science discoveries and all that kind of thing, and not to follow in a blind faith, any kind of a hard uh, teaching. And so, all these teachers, even Muhammad in his Quran, he says there is no compulsion in religion, right? But then what happens is that the institutionalized religions, the leaders of those religions, they try to, follow a certain ideology. Like, in Islam, you have the Sharia law, which is, they want to follow the tradition, and that's why they sometimes, they consider the other religions as not, the right religion. And sometimes the Muslim will say, oh, Islam was the last religion, so now Manek, you should follow that religion, so all kind of thing people. So this is, I would say that we should all focus on the values, the good values that all the religions were telling us, and not to try to convert people from one established religion to another. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manek, for your sharings. Cheryl, could I receive your question or comment? Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Sorry not coming on camera. We've been eating and I'm not organised, but I've really enjoyed this evening. It's very, very helpful, and I've really enjoyed hearing what people have had to say about Baha'i and about humanism and Druid. I know a little bit about each, but not a lot, so it's always helpful to learn more. What strikes me very strongly, not just here, but in my life in general, is that what holds a place of inner well-being for people is that sense of community. And that can be in all different areas, either through a religion or through a social group. And that seems to be what I would call the glue that holds people in a place of well-being. And within that, there has to be a great, what's the words I'm trying to say, an openness of non-judgment, so that when people come into community, they can come with all of who they are and not feel that they can't bring themselves to it. And what I'm hearing from our speakers this evening is that what they put across with their face is just that, is absolutely that sense of acceptance of all. And I'm really sorry that Manek's had some difficult experiences. In response to that, I would say that sometimes what I notice, and admit sometimes I'm guilty of, I don't follow a particular religion, but when I get passionate about something that is important to me, I can come across quite strongly with that. And it's not a sense of wanting to convert anyone. It's really just speaking from my passion and my own experience. And the other thing I would like to say on religions is all those leaders of all these faiths and diverting Christian branches that happen, and different branches in all religions, not just Christianity, is that the people who establish them are absolutely thinking for themselves in what is it, they're questioning what's going on in their world at that moment and looking for something deeper, a deeper personal connection. And so when they speak with absolute conviction from finding that deeper inner personal connection. And that's only what we can do. And then the responsibility as a listener, I feel for myself, is to stay open-hearted to acknowledging the passion that's being given across to me when somebody speaks about their faith, and to really, rather than become defensive, is to rejoice that they've found something that really feeds their soul. So I hope that helps in some way. And thank you. I really enjoyed this evening.
Thank you so much for your sharing, Cheryl. Sorry. Well, I'm just trying to be cautious of the time as well. Are there any further questions? I see that we have about 10 minutes left. Otherwise, I would like to give the floor to my panelists, kind of share their closing remarks or comments.
Sorry, I don't know how to put up my hand, but
Hi, Rainy.
hi there. See if I can start my camera too. I just wanted to ask you, I've been a practicing pagan. I consider myself an eclectic pagan. I've been practicing for about 20 years. I was raised Christian though, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name, our humanist friend, Alavari. You were saying how people for the past few generations children have been abandoning organized religion, and I'm unfortunately one of those numbers. But I just wanted to ask, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems we have today, especially when it pertains to religion, is that people don't seem to recognize that you can disagree with each other and not hate each other. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's this kind of, and this isn't just religion, it's politics too. I feel like people get this kind of moral absolutism that they are 100% right and no other possible truth can exist. And I was just wondering from the panelists what your individual perspectives on that from the perspective of your religions is.
Could I answer that first? I've met Rain before, but that's not the reason.
Sure. Linda, please go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So in Druidry, you can also bring with you your previous faith background if you choose. So you can be a Christian Druid or a pagan Druid, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm a Christo-pagan Druid, so I carry a lot of background with me. But in Scotland, paganism is the fourth largest religion, and that was according to the last census. And so what's happened, a lot of people have left, particularly young people, the statistics show, have left their previous faith behind and become pagans. One of the reasons for this is because of the connection with nature, with each other, with real world problems. Yes, Druids have rituals, but again, I mentioned the trees and groves and working in a grassroots level. And I think that's also the case with humanists. There's this need that's being met that other religions are not focusing on enough, especially for younger people. Younger people want to see real action. They want to see something being done to improve the world and their lives. They want to feel a connection with each other that other religions may not be offering anymore, which is kind of sad because they quite often there are wonderful things in those religions that are being pushed aside. Okay, I'm not going to criticize any particular group or whatever, because it's happening kind of across the board. So I can completely understand what AJ is saying about, people leaving their religions, and particularly young people leaving to go to the humanists, and what Rain is saying, that people like herself are leaving one religion for another. I've witnessed it. I've listened to young people telling me, and not just young people, older people too, telling me why this is so. And I think it's time to listen to this. There is a problem, and it is being dealt with to some extent in interfaith movements, which I think can answer a lot of questions for people who think, oh no, I have all the answers, or my religion has all the answers, and allowing them to speak to people who have a bit more of an open picture of the situation and find out what's wrong. Have that dialogue, ask those difficult questions, and allow people to be themselves, to believe as is right for them. Is it okay to have a belief in more than one God? Is it okay to have a belief in no God? All of these are really great questions, but no one has all the answers. So the only way to sort this out is to get together and talk. So I'm hoping that Rain will be able to do that, that AJ will continue to do that, and Isis as well. I don't mean to leave Isis out of the picture, because Baha'is have an awful lot of really good stuff to say and do. So yeah, we're just going to keep working together. And thank you, Rain. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you brought this up.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm trying to be cautious of the time. Also, I know that Derek had raised his hand. Would you like to reflect on Rain's question, Isis and AJ, but maybe in a short time, like a minute maybe?
Yes. Yeah, I think it was more that joins us together as brings us, there are people trying to I'm not playing papers. I, as a Quaker, am comfortable with silence, and there are many different forms of silence, and the silence that brings us together is a thoughtful silence. It's a silence of unity, and that's maybe what I want to leave with you.
Thank you, Derek. AJ, would you like to reflect on Rainey's question earlier?
Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Rain, and everyone for your audience contributions. Linda mentioned the word dialogue, which I think is key there, as well as the Humanist UK services that I mentioned before, funerals. weddings, etc. We also have a dialogue program that's very important. I think one of my main kind of activities is not just as a humanist speaking to other humanists, is speaking as an ambassador, and not just speaking but studying and reflecting with Baha'is, with Sufis, with Buddhists, with Muslims, etc. So the dialogue, not debate. You're not there to convert or you're not there to persuade, but the dialogue in itself is a skill. And listening, all of these things, you can read a bit more about that on our website, humanist.uk, the dialogue section. That goes hand in hand, I think, with the critical thinking and the reason and empathy that I mentioned before. I come from the martial arts world. I have one foot in that world as well, as humanism and philosophy. And I often think of Bruce Lee's approach to martial arts. He formed Jeet Kune Do, which then now became mixed martial arts, because he realized that there wasn't any one martial art that was the best that could defeat all of the other ones. But the answer was, he thought, to take from each tradition the best, or at least to be aware and to be versed in all of these things. And that's my approach to life, essentially. And I think that's also what the youth are looking for, whether it's in gender or identity and so many other things, ethnicity now with population mixing and globalization. The old rules of, I was born in a family, in a particular place, in a particular profession or a caste, and I'm stuck there, is no longer going to, sort of cut any mustard. In the next century, age of information, century of information, of globalized information and communication, the boundaries are removed. So the ability to not just be pigeonholed into one sect or category, but actually to say, like Bruce Lee did with martial art, we should be able to do, because we're all human, we all share the same challenges and problems. So why shouldn't I, as a humanist, and I do, if I have a particular problem that I know the Islamic tradition solves very well, I use their toolkit. If I have another problem in life that I know the Jewish tradition, the Kabbalah tradition formalizes very well and solves it, I'll borrow from them. So I think having that ability and dissolving these boundaries is, I think, the answer to the challenges of adversity and division, and demagoguery that faces us, which I think makes my life more meaningful at any rate.
Yeah, I agree with that, that we can learn from teachings of other religions, other ideologies, whatever good things we can pick up, we can learn without having to, leave our official religious title, that way we avoid, and we respect everyone, and we may disagree, like someone said before, but we can still agree to disagree, and just follow the best thing that you think is the right for you, kind of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your sharings. Unfortunately, I will need to bring it to the closure tonight's session. Thank you so much for your contributions to my panelists, but also to my participants. It was very interesting finding out about each backgrounds and individual experiences. We want to, as Religions for Peace UK, thank each of you for being part of this meaningful conversation. In a world that often pulls us in many directions, taking time to explore inner strength and resilience is a powerful step towards well-being. We are grateful again to our speakers from the Druid, Humanist, and Baha'i, but also Zoroastrian, Quakers, and all the backgrounds that joined tonight, and for sharing your wisdom, and to all of you for your presence and reflections. We hope you leave today with new insights, practical tools, and a deeper connection to your own journey of inner peace. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you. And we would like to see you in our, upcoming webinars as well. I just shared a link. We're gonna celebrate the International Harmony Week. Again, we will have AJ as one of our speakers, but also other collaborations that we had in past with other organizations. So thank you so much.